Hey, welcome back to Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel. Thank you so much for joining me here on this road trip. If you have been following along, we have been going through the family Christmas tree of Christ as we have been doing character studies, looking through the lineage of Jesus that is leading us up till Christmas. We have covered Adam, Abraham. We were supposed to cover Jacob. Unfortunately, I got sick. We've hit Hezekiah. We've gotten David. We had Josiah. We had Ruth and Rahab. We're going to be looking at Mary. But today we're going to be looking at what I think of as a very kind of obscure person in Scripture. But he plays an extremely important role. And that is Zerubbabel. Say that one like 10 times fast. So, Zerubbabel, like many of these characters we've been looking at, has his own like interest and quirks about him from what we're able to gather in scripture. Now, Zerubbabel does not come up very often. He is mentioned in Haggai, and he's part of the lineage of Christ, which we see outlined in Matthew 1:12 and 13 is where he's actually at. But Zerubbabel is like the grandson of the king who was taken into captivity from Judah. And Zerubbabel returns with the exiles from Babylon, which Babylon was later conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Persian king allowed them to return. Zerubbabel comes back, and he serves as the governor. So he oversees them. He is basically an executive of the state of Persia, more or less. And they are now really, Judah is now basically like a vassal state. And so there is a governor who oversees it. They no longer have like a throne and a ruler or anything like that. Instead, the Medo-Persians had moved to like a governing kind of breakdown. And instead of it being kind of like the way we think of it, like European wise, you know, you have your dukes and your counts and vice counts and your marquises and all that kind of stuff. Instead, they had like different states almost, regions, and then you had like the governors who oversaw those, more so kind of like how we have like here in the US where each state has its own governor, and then you have the president who oversees all of it. Likewise, the Persian Empire, they had governors who oversaw all these different territories, but then everyone answered to, you know, the king. Rome had a very similar breakdown with that as well. And Zerubbabel himself, because he was a governor, it's interesting that he's the person who's appointed to it because he is of the lineage of David. And typically, like when they would take over a kingdom, like, you know, you make sure there's no descendants that are actually a part of whatever that kingly line was. So the fact that he actually is put in a place of influence and power and position and like in the service of the Persian Empire is really quite fascinating. And as we look more at Zerubbabel, he's also referred to in Haggai as being this man who is going to become the signet ring of the Lord. And the signet ring was almost like the signature. It's like the seal of, you know, whatever government administration. I cut my teeth working at the license office. That was my very first job. I learned very early on the importance of having, because I live in Missouri, like the Missouri state seal on things. And that was one of the things that really made it official, especially like when it came to birth certificates. And likewise, that same thing applies to the signet ring. Like that was the person who held that signet ring held the power. And they also would serve as the representative with those documents of like that things have been approved, these are legal documents, these are binding things. And likewise, when you go back and you see, just if you have to read through the Chronicles and First and Second Kings to really see how bad the Northern Kingdom and Judah actually became, as well as some of the minor prophets. They speak to it as well, like Amos and Hosea. But looking at it though, the whole reason they were taken into Babylon is because they continuously failed to uphold their side of the covenant, which, if you've been following along, we discussed covenantal theology this previous Sunday, the third Sunday of Advent, and so there were repercussions to that. And although the kingly line has continued through Zerubbabel and ultimately leads to Jesus, the authority that kingly line had has been greatly diminished. And now they are not quite puppets for the Persian Empire, but they do not have the same seat of authority that they previously did. However, they are still put in a place of leadership over Israel. And that is through Zerubbabel. And the thing that I think we can really learn from Zerubbabel and like just the way things worked in his life is really that God is faithful. He is fulfilling the covenant that he made with David, that there was going to continue to be someone who was going to be in that seat who would lead Israel. Now, the ultimate form of that covenant, the fulfillment of it, is going to be Jesus Christ. But we can still see, though, where for Jesus to be there, that means the line had to continue. And not only does the line continue, but God allows that line to still be in a place of significant influence. We see that type of faithfulness that God has. All throughout Scripture, we see how faithful he is. Even when we maybe don't want him to be quite that faithful. They didn't end up in Babylon because of their sin, because they didn't uphold their covenant, and because God followed through with what he said the consequences were going to be. That's still him being faithful to what he said was going to happen. And we get to see that play out in Scripture, 2,000 plus years later. We can see how everything's happening because, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. But part of that hindsight is seeing that no matter what, God keeps his promises, God keeps his word. And he made sure that there was going to be someone who was going to be in a place of influence that followed him, who feared him, who was going to pursue him, and who was going to help listen to the high priest that came back, and was going to hear what was being said, so that especially when they sent Haggai to them, when they send Zechariah to them, and they are challenged on, are you really doing what God's called you to do? Are you building the temple? Are you worried about having nice houses? Have you returned to Israel, and are you going to be faithful? Did you learn your lesson? And Zerubbabel listened to the high priest. He listened to the prophets that came up to him. He heard what was being said, and he helped keep the people going in the direction that they were supposed to go. Now, did he fail? Yes, he did. He's human. We all screw up. We all sin. We all make mistakes. But God was still faithful, and we see that faithfulness played out in his life. And I am just truly enjoying doing these character studies. I loved studying up on all these. I loved writing all the articles for the website. And we're getting so close to Christmas. Today is day 19. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's day 19 that we are getting, Christmas is less than a week away, and I love Christmas. But I hope that you are, as you're gearing up just for this Christmas holiday, going to either to, Christmas Eve services, over the course of the next week, that you just keep in mind, that why we're celebrating, and that it's not about giving the most expensive gift or receiving the most expensive gift. It's not all about, the trimmings and trappings and the tree and the pretty paper. Those are all great add-ons, but it really is about celebrating the birth of Christ and remembering what he has done for us, and looking back and seeing the build up to this first Advent for him. So I hope you've enjoyed this. You can always go back and read the articles that I write for this by going to my website, www.roadtrippingwithrachel.com. You can also always feel free to follow me on Instagram as well. I have the same handle everywhere. That way you can see some of the more activities that I'm doing throughout the Christmas season. I haven't done a ton of them because I have a real job and quite honestly I'm tired when I get home. But there are some fun things that I do try to get up to, and I'm planning on posting some things, like either Christmas parties or like, you know, maybe I'm going to be baking cookies, and I've got stuff that I'm going to be making for different parties here coming up. So I hope that you get a chance to enjoy some of those things as well. Otherwise, I will see you all next time, whenever we finish up our Advent study.